to serve him. So this is following some prayers that were made by the Charanas. Being self-sufficient, Krishna does not require the service of any living entity, although he has many devotees. It is because Krishna is so kind and merciful that he gives everyone the opportunity to serve him, as though he required the service of his devotees. Sometimes you see that devotees have a particular rasa of protecting Krishna, but even the cowherd boys, sometimes they protect Krishna, but he doesn't need any protection, but they like to have that rasa and he enjoys that rasa with them. Regarding his moral principles, it is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna is ruling over Vrindavan as death personified to the thieves, as pleasing bliss to the pious, as the most beautiful Cupid to the young girls, and as the most munificent personality to the poor men. He is as refreshing as the full moon to his friends, and to his opponents he is the annihilating fire generated from Lord Shiva. Krishna is therefore the most perfect moralist in his reciprocal dealings with different kinds of persons. When his death personified to the thieves, it is not that he is without moral principles or that he is cruel. He is still kind, because to punish thieves with death is to exhibit the highest quality of moral principles. In Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says that he deals with different kinds of persons according to their dealings with him. Krishna's dealings with devotees and with non-devotees, although different, are equally good, because Krishna is all good. His dealings with everyone are always good. Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki, Shri Nectar of Devotion ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 14, entitled Ideal Family Life. Text number 38. Do you have it up here? Teshu Eva Bhagavan Rajams. Teshveva Bhagavan Rajams. Taratamyena Vartate. Taratamyena Vartate. Tasmat Patram Hi Purusho. Tasmat Patram Hi Purusho. Yavan Atma Yate Yate. Yavan Atma Yate Yate. Teshveva Bhagavan Rajams. Taratam Yena Vartate. Tasmat Patram Hi Purusho. Yavanatma Yate Yate. Teshveva Bhagavan Rajams. Taratam Yena Vartate. Tasmat Patram Hi Purusho. Yavan Atma Yate Yate. Teshveva Bhagavan Rajams. Taratam Yena Vartate. Tasmat Patram Hi Purusho. Yavanatma Yate Yate. Please chant. Teshu. Among the different types of bodies, demigod, human, animal, bird, etc. Eva, indeed, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Paramatma feature. Rajan, O King, Taratamyana, comparatively more or less. Vartate is situated. Tasmat, therefore. Patram, the Supreme Person. He, indeed, Purusha, Paramatma, Yavan, as far as. Atma, the degree of understanding. Yata, development of austerity and penance. Iyate is manifest. Translation, O King Yudhisthira, the supersoul in every body gives intelligence to the individual soul according to his capacity for understanding. Therefore, the supersoul is the chief within the body. The supersoul is manifested to the individual soul according to the individual's comparative development of knowledge, austerity, penance, and so on. Please repeat, O King Yudhisthira. The supersoul in every body gives intelligence to the individual soul according to his capacity for understanding. Therefore, the supersoul is the chief within the body. The supersoul is manifested to the individual soul according to the individual's comparative development of knowledge, austerity, penance, and so on. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In Bhagavad Gita 15:15, it is said, Mata Smritir Gyanam Apohanam Cha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his localized aspect, gives intelligence to the individual soul as far as he is able to grasp it. Therefore, we find the individual soul in different high and low positions. A living entity with the body of a bird or beast cannot take instructions from the Supreme Soul as adequately as an advanced human being. Thus, there are gradations of bodily forms. In human society, the perfect Brahmin is supposed to be the most advanced in spiritual consciousness, and further advanced than the Brahmins is the Vaishnava. Therefore, the best persons are the Vaishnavas and Vishnu. When charity is to be given, one should take instruction from Bhagavad Gita 17:20. Datavyam iti yardanam diyate nupakarine deshe kali chapatricha taddanam satvikam smritam. That gift which is given out of duty at the proper time and place to a worthy person and without the expectation of return is considered to be charity in the mode of goodness. One should give charity to the Brahmins and Vaishnavas. For this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead will be worshipped. In this connection, Srila Madhvacharya comments, Pramadi stan stavaranteshu na vishesho hare kvachit vyakti matra visheshena taratamyam vadanti cha. Beginning from Brahma down to the ant, everyone is conducted by the Supersoul Ishwar Sarvabhutanam Hrideshir Junatishtati. But because of a particular person's advancement in spiritual consciousness, he is considered to be important. Therefore, the Brahmin Vaishnava is important. And above all, the Supersoul, the personality of Godhead, is the most important personality. Om Agyanatimirandasya Ganjana Slakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadirtamne Kham Karoti Vachalam Bhangam Lagate Grimyat Kripatam Ham Vandesh Grintarnam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. O King, you just hear the super soul, and everybody gives intelligence to the individual soul according to his capacity for understanding. Therefore, the super soul is the chief within the body. The super soul is manifested to the individual soul according to the individual's comparative development of knowledge, austerity, penance, and so on. The scientists have this term called instinct. They can't explain how is it that a living entity born in a certain species immediately assumes the nature of that species. They say it's just instinct. So, and even if you say, well, that instinct is programmed into the DNA, then who's programming? Just like they say, nature. So they want to remove God, but they will remove God from everything by saying, instead of saying the Paramatma or some other term that they might be able to recognize as God within, or instead of, they'll say instinct. And instead of saying by God's will or by the nature of God, they'll just say nature. And Prabhupada makes that point. If we talk about nature, then we say whose nature? Just like it's some devotee's nature to sleep in Bhagavatam class, regardless of who's giving. So it's laws of nature, Prabhupada says, indicates there must be a lawmaker. If we go to the courts and there's some laws, or you're on the street and you break some law, then someone has made that law. At least some body of people or some person has made that law, and everybody's required to follow it, and everyone accepts the law is there. Even sometimes people break the law, but when they're breaking the law, they're careful to make sure they don't get caught. Like they say, the criminals in jail are the ones that are not very smart because they get caught. There's many criminals out there who haven't been caught. And they're aware of the laws of the country. So we're aware of the laws of nature. If you fall into a pool of water, immediately you know if you go under, you've got to hold your breath. You can't breathe underwater. Or if you're a very tall precipice, you're aware that the law of nature is such that if you lean over the end and slip and fall, you got a long way down, and you're most likely going to terminate your life in this body. Prabhupada talks about the difference of the mind and intelligence. Slight deviation is if you're at a very top of a tall building and you look over and the mind says jump, the intelligence says don't. That is the difference between mind and intelligence. Sometimes people think following the mind, whatever it comes up with, then that is what makes us free. This is called manarat, following the chariot of the mind. And people think freedom means simply to do whatever you like without any restriction. But actually here, we're seeing that according to the living entities' use of their minute independence, according to the austerities they perform, the knowledge they develop, then they're given a body related to that. And Prabhupada says elsewhere that this is Krishna's mercy. If you want to be a bird and fly through the sky, and Krishna will say, okay, why have a hang gliding, why have a glider Why have an airplane if you like fly, and have a body of a bird? That's what you want. As Krishna's mercy, Prabhupada calls it. If you want to sleep all the time, then have a body of a bear. Bears like to sleep, or some other living entity likes to sleep. Then you can hibernate for so many months of the year. It can be a bear or a tortoise or something like that. If you like swimming so much, then Krishna says, why not have the body of a fish? And so Prabhupada said, this is Krishna's mercy. Of course, for devotees, we wouldn't see that as the mercy that we want. The mercy we want is to get out of this material world and go back to Godhead, where we can serve Krishna in the association with devotees. That's the kind of mercy we're wanting. And this is what we're practicing here in Krishna consciousness. So this thing about instinct is actually simply another way of denying God. And according to the body one receives, then they have a capacity for understanding. And Prabhupada has mentioned many times that we don't see the we see the now that was that verse. Now that we have a Tato Brahma Jigyasa, now that we have the human form of life, it's time to inquire. And we don't see the animals inquiring. They're simply following their senses, because that's what they did in the previous life as a human, so they get the body according to their desire. They're not interested. It's just like Jesus Christ said, don't cast pearls before swine. So if I remember Rahini Nandan giving a class, he says, if you go to a hog, you say, my dear hog, please have some nice pearls, or you give it a plate of stool, the hog will immediately go to the stool, especially if it's fresh out the oven. It's not interested in the pearls. It can't appreciate it. So according to the modes of material nature we associate with, then certain things are attractive to us. And then according to the modes we associate with, then we get a certain body. This is explained. Yam yam vapi smarambhavam, whatever we think of at the time of death, we'll attain that state. So whatever attachments we develop throughout this life, that's what we'll try to hold on to, or that's what will be occupying our mind at the time of death. Devotees knowing this, then they try to develop attachment to Krishna through chanting, hearing, learning more about Krishna, serving Krishna, and just overall absorbing our mind in Krishna's in Krishna consciousness. I came across a nice quote. I think it was just this morning. No, it was just the other day. So Prabhupada here in a letter to Mukunda on 6th of May 1968 said, every disciple should always remain busy in some work for Krishna. We shall not allow to remain vacant our mind. And if the mind is always filled up with Krishna consciousness activities, there is no chance of Maya to sit on the mind and to force us to act under her spell. So this is what happens sometimes. Just like recently we had some trouble at the temple. When the trouble came, we asked some senior devotees, spiritual masters, about the situation, and they said, so who's causing the trouble? Is it those who are doing nothing? So this is the thing, if we don't properly engage our mind, then who knows what kind of Maya we may get involved in. And Prabhupada was saying here, if we're constantly engaging our mind and senses in Krishna's service, and that begins with Shravanam Kirtanam, but throughout our whole day, Srila Prabhupada's organized things in such a way that we can be fully absorbed in Krishna's service. And if we're at home and we don't have the opportunity to be fully engaged in Krishna's service, then just dedicate everything we do towards Krishna. That way we remain Krishna conscious. And by doing that, there's no chance for Maya to sit in the mind. if Krishna is always in the mind, the purposeful ever doing things is to be in the mind. Just like some devotees, they don't live at the temple, they have families, they have jobs, they have houses, etc. But the purpose of them doing that is to maintain their Krishna conscious families, and in their mind, they're always thinking, I'm looking forward to coming to the temple. And then they make their own home a temple. So in this way, they're Krishna conscious. And if we've got any doubt about whether we're in Krishna consciousness or not, then just chant Hare Krishna. That is the quickest and easiest way. Just put Krishna in your mind by chanting. And Prabhupada said the minimum chanting 16 rounds on the beads, but unlimited off the beads. So, like Prabhupada himself, he demonstrated, says, now that I've chanted my 16 rounds, I can do any damn thing. So that's not the case. And someone came up with this bogus philosophy that after the morning program, you can do whatever you like. It doesn't matter how far you fall, as long as you come back to the morning program the next day, because Krishna consciousness is so powerful that you can eradicate all that nonsense. So then the question would be, what's the point of doing any devotional service? What's the point of spreading the movement? What's the point of Krishna saying, always think of me and become my devotee? So such a deluded conception of thing. Now, at one sense, you could say, well, it's a glorification of how pure Krishna consciousness is, that simply by coming to Mangalarti, chanting your rounds, etc., then it's so pure that you can wash away all sins. But it does mean to say that as soon as we say, okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, and then we walk out the temple, then we just like go and do any old kind of crazy nonsense. And unfortunately, we can see that the devotee who's propagating this, I won't mention the name, it turned out that the person was engaged in a lot of nonsense. So sometimes people reveal themselves by such kind of wayward philosophies. But we keep it simple, don't try to invent anything new. Prabhupada said this is one of the most difficult things, actually, because particularly in Kali Yuga, modes of passion and ignorance are quite powerful. And there's such a strong influence of that. Devotees have to be very wary to try to keep aloof from the modes of passion and ignorance. And so here it's mentioned that the Brahmin, he is considered to be, let's see what the words are. Brahmin is supposed to be the most advanced in spiritual consciousness. So you can see the word is supposed to be. The perfect Brahmin is supposed to be. So he's not necessarily just saying Brahmin is the most advanced. He's saying the perfect Brahmin. So he's given the opportunity for improvement. If someone is born in a Brahmin family or someone is initiated as a Brahmin, then it's not that now that they're a Brahmin, they can get their Brahmin thread out and curse people. There was one devotee, he got Brahmin initiation and he said to another senior devotee, so does that mean that I've now got the potency to make curses? Not exactly what he should have been extracting from reading Srimad Bhagavatam. The Brahmin is supposed to be compassionate, tolerant, so many qualities of the Brahmin there. Not that as soon as he gets the Brahmin thread, then he's out for revenge. He's got a little black book with the hit list. And the Brahmin doesn't want to lose his potency by making such curses, although there's occasional stories in the Bhagavatam about that, like King Vena. He was such an evil personality, despite all the attempts to try to give him good advice, then he was causing so much havoc that eventually the Brahmins got together and they cursed him, didn't they? So it's not something that happens. The Brahmin's supposed to be tolerant, not like someone disrespects us and we get the Brahmin thread out and we start glowering at them and We want to burn them to ashes. But still, a Brahmin is tolerant to, regarding themselves, but they're not tolerant if someone is insulting Krishna or insulting or attacking a devotee. They're not tolerant if someone is propagating a bogus philosophy. And see, Prabhupada, he was immediately, his finger was on the trigger regarding anything which is going to jeopardize this Krishna conscious movement. He would shoot it down pretty quick. Even to the point where some of his early disciples were propagating, and I think even one of them might have had sannyas at that time. They were propagating the Prabhupada was in India and he's not coming back because the devotees have failed to realize that he's Krishna. And then Prabhupada was furious. He says, kick them out. Immediately say, who is this? Kick them out. He didn't think, okay, if they're a nice senior devotee, one of my early disciples, I'll take them aside and tell them. No, immediately just kick them out. He didn't allow any such nonsense to come. And then they came back and they apologized and they let them back in. But Prabhupada was furious. He said, I never said I'm God. I always said I'm servant of God. And it's it's interesting that some of these people who present themselves to be Brahmins, like Hridayananda Maharaj, I remember hearing a lecture of him many years ago, where he was speaking with some students in Mumbai, and he was asking them, some questions. Some of them said they were from Brahmin family. They know all about this. So I'm knowing everything. He says, okay, so you're drinking alcohol, are you eating meat? Does that mean that you're still a Brahmin? You're born in a Brahmin family, but if a Brahmin eats meat, is he still a Brahmin? If a Brahmin drinks alcohol, is he still a Brahmin? So therefore Krishna says, Guna Karma Vibhagasaha, Chaturvana Maya Shishtam, Guna Karma Vibhagasaha. That these four orders of the spiritual and the social orders, they were by quality and activities. And we see other examples in the Shastra where people who may have been born in a lower family, like Prahlad Maharaj, he was born in the family of Asuras, wasn't he? The Adityas. So, and he was, he's regarded as topmost devotee. He's one of the Mahajans. And we have Lord Nrsimha's appearance coming up on Sunday. We'll hear the glories of Lord Nrsimhadev. We'll hear the glories of Prahlad Maharaj. And we are in the mood of Prahlad Maharaj. Prabhupada said that we're not interested in simply going hiding in the countryside or living in the forest. We're following in the mood of Prahlad Maharaj, who wanted to go to the cities where the people are. So although we live here in the country, then we are interested in taking this message of Krishna consciousness to where the people, the busiest places where the people are. And literally we used to do that when we were younger and full of energy. Then we'd go into a city and we'd see where's the busiest thoroughfare of people, and we'd just dive in like it was an ocean of nectar. It's more like an ocean of passion. And we'd have names for places, like in Glasgow, there was a very busy place at one time. Boots the Chemist was on one corner of Argyll Street and then Union Street, and we called it Passion Corner because it was just like, it wasn't even a conveyor belt, it was like an avalanche of people going both ways at all times, and you were standing there like some turnstile on speed. And but the devotees come back with a score every day until they got a few years down the road and they were exhausted and realised that you can still stop as many people in a quieter street. Shri Kodni time Apishashiki. But Lord Chaitanya says there's devotees in every town and village. So of course we go to the busy cities, but there's devotees also to be found in quiet places. And some people, they don't like the cities, so they avoid the cities. Like if probably most of us, if we weren't going out there for Krishna consciousness, we would avoid the busy cities. I remember as a youngster, whenever I had to go into Glasgow, I would purposely go early, and I'd have a plan of where I was going, and I'd basically kind of try to get everything done quickly before all the crowds started coming in. In those days, they didn't have pedestrian precincts, so everybody was crammed onto the pavement, and you're trying to get somewhere, and you were like this. If you lift your feet up, you probably get carried along. It was crazy busy, so I thought, well, let's just get in quick, get everything done, and then practically running from shop to shop to get back out before the madness starts. So some people, they prefer to avoid the busy places, so we can go everywhere and we'll find devotees. Even in the smallest of towns and villages. Lord Chaitanya personally, he was traveling on foot 6 years, going to all sorts of places, converting people into devotees. Even through Jarikanda forest, he was getting animals to chant. Just like here in this purport, Prabhupada is saying that normally the living entities are restricted, like we don't find the birds that are living in the trees here queuing up to come in for the deity greeting. We don't find them, queuing up for Mangalati. If you put some prasadam out, then they maybe queue up for that. They don't really have the capacity to sit there saying, what is the purpose of life? Why am I in this bird's body? Occasionally, Krishna will give a special mercy that, like Bharat Maharaj, he remembered his previous lives when he became a deer. But when Lord Chaitanya was going through Jarikanda forest, then he revived their original Krishna consciousness regardless of what body they were in. But generally the Paramatma is dictating according to the living entity's past karma and the body they've received. And even sometimes the devotees, they went to Prabhupada and they said, Prabhupada, we've been such rascals before we came to the temple. We've ruined ourselves through sex and drugs and things like that. We don't have much capacity. Prabhupada said, make the best use of a bad bargain. So whatever our capacity is, we just utilize that in Krishna's service. And therefore the devotees are kind to all living entities. We don't expect living entities to come and try to buy a book off us in the street, but if you see them, you might give them some prasad. Sometimes devotees do that. They stop for the prasadam and some birds drop out the sky and then they give them some prasad. And then devotees thinking, what about me? They end up getting too compassionate, giving it all away. Charity begins at home. There was one time when Prabhupada was in one of the airports in America. He was due to depart. And one devotee had brought along a lot of Mangalati sweets to distribute to the airport. And he said, Prabhupada, should I distribute these to the karmis? And he says, no, give them to the devotees. Charity begins at home. So we have to have this balance of making sure that we get enough mercy so that we can keep going and giving out the mercy as well. So that balance is quite simple. Prabhupada gave it. Sometimes people get caught up in, what's the balance? And often that means that they're not quite decided what they're going to do with themselves. But basically the ISKCON sandwich is that we have sadhana in the morning, then we do service, and then we have time for sadhana in the evening. And Prabhupada says that this is in the morning we discuss philosophy, and in the evening we do Leela. So we don't get into heavy philosophy just before going to sleep. We read Chaitanya Leela, Krishna Leela, Prabhupada Leela. And this is a nice state of mind, so that even in our sleeping state, we may remember Krishna. And when we're so absorbed in our service, either as a pujari, whatever service we're doing, whether we're doing work around the temple or out preaching, when our mind is always absorbed in thinking, of our service, how to improve our service, how to do it to the best of our ability, then even in our sleep, we'll be doing service. Sometimes you hear devotees talking in their sleep. Anybody ever heard that? You can only reveal it if it's Krishna conscious. What does it say? Yeah, I've seen it. What's that, sorry? Yeah, you wake up looking to see what's in your sankatan bag. Oh no, I thought I distributed those books. They're still there. And then we get the credit for that as well, isn't it? Like that devotee who did the offerings to the deity within his mind. He was poor Brahmin. He didn't have the facility to offer much, but he was offering sweet rice, and the Lord was so pleased that even when he went to check the sweet rice in his meditation, he burnt his finger. And Lord Vishnu was laughing, and Lakshmi says, "Why are you laughing?" He says, "Oh, because of my devotee." And he explained that he was doing this very sincere manasa puja, offering within his mind. Of course, that doesn't mean to say, "Oh, good, I'll just lie in my bed all day. I'll do a morning program in my mind. I'll do all my service in my mind." What about prasadam? We want to do that in our mind as well. You're going to go to the toilet in your mind. So, by remembering Krishna, then Krishna is also remembering us. Krishna never forgets us, but if we remember Krishna, then he's very happy. And it's mentioned that when the living entity chants the holy name, then Krishna is dancing on the tongue of the living entity, because Krishna is more keen to have us come back to him than we are to go back to him. Therefore, he's very jubilant to see the living entity turn back to him, and he makes all sorts of arrangements for that to happen. So for someone to be considered a Brahmin, whether they're born in a Brahmin family or whether they're initiated as a Brahmin, then it's not that when one gets initiated as a Brahmin that, okay, they've achieved something. No, they're getting the opportunity now to be trained. So, for example, if one gets in Brahmin initiation and then they get invited to learn deity worship, they don't think, well, I'm a Brahmin, I know everything, you don't have to tell me. It's because in the deity department, there's not 1 millimeter deviation from the script. In the spiritual world, everything is very finely organized according to different times. There are shastras there which give Krishna's daily schedule. He's so regulated. And he's spontaneous. He can do whatever he likes. So when it comes down to deity worship, 2 things are there, isn't it? Punctuality and cleanliness. We don't compromise on that. Deity worship is an opportunity to come closer to the Lord, and we're getting a great opportunity to be personally connected with the Lord. So therefore, we don't change anything. We don't think, oh, I think it'd be better to do it like this. Before you do anything like that, you check with authorities. You may have a good idea. It may improve efficiency, or it may improve cleanliness, or whatever. But we don't just make a decision ourselves. And this following without deviation is actually very important, because in this way we can be trained to go back to Godhead. Prabhupada has given us very good standards so that within ISKCON we're being trained by the pure devotee of the Lord, so that we can become eligible for going back to Godhead. Unfortunately, some people tend to speculate and deviate, and they make up their own versions of things, and it never is auspicious. I remember Nisaya Kavacha, he visited once, and he's our GBC for deity worship, and some devotee wanted to change this and change that when we had already established things. And he says, changes the mode of passion. That's not auspicious. So if there's any changes that should be done through the proper authorities and things like that. And when we're trained, I remember when I was first of all doing Tulsinath and the Shalagrams Puja down at Garanga Ashram, and I was following very strictly the whole procedure. Then as time went by, I began to see certain shortcuts. Then I stopped, and because I became familiar with the whole procedure, then I memorized it. I didn't have to refer to it. And then certain things seemed more efficient to me, but I realised by doing that efficiency, I was neglecting the procedure which was set out, and I was getting in the mode of passion as to see how many milliseconds can we shave off. But then when I thought, okay, let's just go back, let's reform this these shortcuts, and let's just go back to the script of what this puja is supposed to be, verbatim. And when I went back to that, I felt much more satisfied and peaceful, almost as if the Lord had said, welcome back to doing it correctly again. And so this, to me, was a great lesson. Is like, okay, you might slightly deviate by doing certain things, but it's not authorized. You don't make any change whatsoever, of the slightest change in this regard, without authorization. Of course, in other services, we have a lot of freedom for creativity, etc., like that. Or freedom for being independently using our intelligence. And this is also to be encouraged. Prabhupada refers to the term, what's it called? Stita Muni. He says a Stita Muni is someone who's always agitating their mind to think of new ways of spreading Krishna consciousness. So just like yesterday, we went to one event in the Theosophical Society, and it was very nice. And very much they're into peace. And peace is okay, but having peace, or to spread peace, we must have peace ourselves. And peace is only a byproduct of devotional service. I remember Pushkar Prabhu giving a class, and he was talking about some Mayavadis. He says they're simply interested in peace. So, and peace is a byproduct of devotional service. And sometimes devotees are not very peaceful because they're taking on responsibility for spreading Krishna consciousness. And Lord Chaitanya, he appreciates that as we're relieving his headache when we go out on Sankirtan, or when we do service related to maintaining the services and the activities at the temple. We're keeping this temple here for visitors. We don't need it. Just like on the way back from the program yesterday, we were saying, actually, we only need even a tenth of the facilities we have at Krishna is more than enough for us. But we keep it going for visitors and to cultivate devotees, bring people to Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada said, if we simply have a mud hut, who will come? Maybe a few ecologists would come. So our purpose is to follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas and remain protected in that way. And when we have opportunity to engage our mind in thinking of ways to spread Krishna consciousness, then we use our intelligence with that. We discuss things, we try this, we try that. And Prabhupada was very much in the mood of try this, try that. But it has to be done with due consideration. And also it should be authorized. Just like devotees, when they had different ideas, they go to Prabhupada, should we try this? Should we try wearing a suit and tie? And he says, should we do this? He says, try it. And what was the main principle was they were going out on Sankirtan trying to distribute books. So that was the principle. The detail is whether you wear a dhoti, whether you wear trousers, whatever's going to work for the service, the betterment of the service. And sometimes you may find that something will work, and it's not simply you take a screenshot of that, and then that works everywhere forevermore. It may work according to time, place, and circumstance in that place. So we have to be very much aware of time, place, and circumstance, just like I was going to share a story, but it might be not the best story. Sometimes devotees will go, well, there was one devotee, Prabhupada Charan, and a Talkship where they used to go traveling together. And sometimes they'd go to various towns, and you would have perhaps a line where you try to hit people up, or you try to engage people in buying a book. and perhaps you get £2 or £5. But sometimes they go to some places where they realise that people couldn't afford that, and they just immediately start saying, okay, everyone's given 50p, something like that, and then they still, by the end of the day, they still do a similar kind of score, because they were able to adjust to the time, place, and circumstance. You know, if you go to a well-off area and people are able to give, you know, a nice amount all the time, but then you think, okay, that's the way for success, just ask everyone for a tenner. But then you go to a place where there's a lot of unemployment and they can't give that, then you end up with nothing. So it's important that we become aware of this time, place, and circumstances so we can adjust according to that. What works today might not work tomorrow. And that way we don't just become robotic in our service. And Krishna consciousness is dynamic. We may have a mantra, and sometimes we're on the street and we have a mantra for stopping people. But no matter what your mantra is, it doesn't work with everybody all the time. So we have to be open to adjusting to the time, place, and circumstance, while at the same time keeping to the basic principle. So beyond the Brahmin is the Vaishnava. Prabhupada says that the perfect Brahmin is supposed to be the most advanced in spiritual consciousness, and further advanced in the Brahmin is the Vaishnava. Therefore, the best persons are the Vaishnavas and Vishnu. So we also shouldn't become like the caste Brahmins, where we say, well, I've joined the Hare Krishna movement 3 weeks ago, I've got shaved up, I've got a tilak and Sika, Dhoti, and I'm now better than a Brahmin because I'm a Vaishnava. So we're not rubber stamping ourselves. We have to become just like the Brahmin has to be by qualities. Otherwise, can the person be considered a Brahmin? Even the Sudra has to be considered by qualities. The Sudra is obedient to the other classes. If a Sudra is simply an upstart and rebels all the time, they're not even a good Sudra. And a Vaishnava also, for us to be able to have the honor of calling ourselves a Vaishnava or identifying as a Vaishnava, then we have to be practicing and aspiring to absorb the qualities of the Vaishnava. And sometimes we can admit that we don't behave like Vaishnavas. But being in the association of Vaishnavas, then we often get the opportunity to improve our character. And then we can truly be recognized as Vaishnavas. And then even, Prabhupada says, even if a person sees someone performing devotional service, namely the Vaishnava, then they're automatically raised to the mode of goodness. So sometimes if you're out on the street doing book distribution and you think you're getting nowhere just by being there, people who know who you are especially, then they're becoming Krishna conscious. Oh, look, there's those Hare Krishnas again. They're always harassing us, trying to sell us their books on this mumbo-jumbo language. They tell you, here's a free book for you, but you need to give a donation. I don't want your book. That's okay, it's yours. All right, thanks, but you need to give a donation anyway. So this was the tug of war we used to have. Therefore, we started using the clipboard because, and the public actually told us themselves that they much more appreciated that approach than the old. You know, if you're able to do straight books expertly, that's fine. But the main thing is we should go out there to make the people more favourable to Krishna consciousness, not just to get a score and agitate them. Of course, we can't take responsibility for everyone because some people are agitated no matter what you do or say. So we're very fortunate. We have the capacity, not only as a human being now, but they have the capacity to be a devotee and go back to Godhead. And the Lord within is guiding us at times, even sometimes through the non-devotees. The Lord will give us messages. And through the other devotees and the spiritual master, who's the external manifestation of the super soul, then our capacity is mercifully being increased more and more by the more we surrender in Krishna consciousness. So we should keep good association and continue with our practice, and our capacity will increase more and more, because the living entity's capacity to serve Krishna is unlimited. And at the moment we may have certain conditions, but as we go on, then we come to the point where our service is unconditional. Okay, we'll just stop there. And any comments or questions? Is that your hand up or just your finger? Is that a small question?
Thank you, Prabhu, for a nice class.
Thank you.
I was thinking, you mentioned the letter from Mukunda, Maharaj, and was talking, I think, how we should engage the mind and not keep ourselves busy. So I'm just thinking sometimes, well, especially me, I'm at the temple, I'm very busy, but my mind's very much engaged in Maya. So how do we kind of line up what we're doing with what our mind, the mind and our activities?
And this is natural. That we come from a very long time in the material world where we've been conditioned for many lifetimes. So ideally we continue with the devotional service, and the mind it catches up in due course. Sometimes we're actually dragging the mind. The mind's like a child that doesn't want to go to school, or doesn't want to go to the dentist, and the parents dragging it, saying, no, it's for your own good. So our intelligence has at some point decided this Krishna consciousness is actually for my own eternal well-being, so I'm going to engage in it. And in the midst of engaging it, sometimes the mind's freaking out. It's screaming, this is too much, it's too much. And that becomes the mantra, the too much mantra. And then we believe it sometimes, so try not to believe it. And sometimes if it is too much, then you speak with someone and say, okay, I've got too much to do. Yeah, I can't keep up with it. We have to be careful we don't overload like that. If we are failing to chant our rounds or do our reading, or we're not getting enough sleep, then we have to either work out or speak with authorities as to how we can balance that. Otherwise, we can't be successful. Krishna says that the success, one who eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or sleeps too little, can't be a yogi. We have to be, and that's maybe different for every individual. Some people can live on less sleep. Like Tribhuvanath, for example, he was very much an example of someone who's like enthusiasm personified, chanting his rounds, doing kirtan, preaching, doing so many festivals and other services. And he would be working night and day. There's many wonderful stories of him driving a bus along the motorway fast asleep, and the police are trying to stop him for about 15 minutes, and they're planning to throw the book at him, but by the time, and they get the siren on, the horn on, the lights flashing, and he's just going down the motorway like this straight, and he's like that driving. And finally they get him to stop, and they say, please stop and take rest somewhere. We were going to take you into the police station and we're going to throw the book at you, but we realised that somebody up there's looking after you, because something like this could never happen. Never seen anything like it. So sometimes devotees would try to imitate him, but he told them, I'm running off a different energy. Don't try to copy me. So he would tell them, go and take rest, go and take prasad, like that, balance out. So following in the footsteps, but being careful not to imitate. And also sometimes we have to try to preach to our mind and understand that what we're doing. Sometimes the mind says, I can't. Then there was an old, he was known as the father of positive thinking, Norman Vincent Peale. I don't know if anyone's heard of him. He wrote a book called Power of Positive Thinking. And one of the chapters was called Knock the T Off of Can't. So when you're programming yourself to say, I can't, and we say, I can, just try even sometimes changing that. It changes the mind as well. Like sometimes people have even trouble chanting. Instead of saying I can't, you say I chant. So the mind is very, very powerful, and sadhana is that we use our intelligence to come to the conclusion that I should do this, and then in the process of doing it, we can it can be a struggle at times, but you continue doing it, and then the mind will become your friend. So in the beginning, the mind may come up with distractions, and that is sometimes the thing which makes us very tired, makes us negative, etc. But if the mind is changed, then we find that the body will follow that too. But still, we shouldn't. We should balance things out. Otherwise, that can be a detriment as well. Anyone like to add anything to that? I'm sure devotees have got their own experiences they can share.
Well, service and our mind's all over the place. We're actively doing something in Krishna service, but our mind's not really doing it. How do we align those things up?
Well, sometimes if the mind is slow to catch on, so you do it anyway, and then after a while, like with chanting, and then the mind catches up later on with what the program is. It means you have to have a certain amount of patience there as well, because it takes a little while sometimes to break through in anything you're doing, any devotional activity. So that breaking through means you have to continue on enthusiastically and confidently, and then just be patient. And sometimes if devotees are a bit jittery, they're doing somewhere and they're thinking, I need to change, I need to go here, or I need to try this, and I need to do that. But they just have to settle down and wait, and then Krishna can actually reciprocate with the endeavor, But if we want things instantly, then we're not given a chance. I wonder how many devotees would have stayed if they'd just been patient, because they just become frustrated with the process, and if they'd have carried on, they'd have looked back in retrospect and realized, oh, so that's why that had to happen. Oh, and that's why I had to go through that. But just because they were impatient, they didn't let Krishna unfurl his plan for them, So it's very, very important to stay patient and hang on. You ask any older devotee, are you sorry that you're still here? They'll say no. You ask any devotee that's blooped, are you glad that you left? And they'll say no. They just didn't wait long enough to let the plan unfurl,
And of course, we have the verse, always think of me and become my devotee, or engage your mind in thinking of me. So we engage the body, but sometimes we don't engage the mind. Physically, we may be hardworking, but the mind is sometimes a bit more difficult to engage. So that takes a bit of effort. Sometimes we're a bit lazy mentally and busy physically. But if we can continue to get some momentum on the mind to engage that, because our mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. To begin with, then it's often averse to devotional service. But when it gets a taste, then it's like, it starts giving us ideas. Instead of giving us ideas to enjoy Maya or ideas to give up Krishna consciousness, then it starts giving us ideas, how we can engage in devotional service, and that's when it's our friend. So right now we may have a certain stock of things which have to get purged from the mind, but by engaging Rishikesha, Rishikena, saving them back to Uchita, by engaging the mind, the senses, and the service of the master of senses, then the mind becomes purified. But we have to make sure that we're balanced enough so that we can continue with the process and we don't give up on it. And if we can't work out that balance, then it's better to ask someone else who can maybe see it from an outside point of view. We don't have to go it alone. Okay, we'll just stop there. It's Guru Govinda Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki.